Time to talk AFL on The Informer, and the man who does it for us each and every week and has done from the very beginning is Alex Caiafa. In fact, if you ever want to see any of the AFL podcasts that we've done over the past year or so, just go to TheInformer.tv. Alex, welcome.
Thanks, George. It's a bit different doing it over Zoom, but got to get through it with this lockdown.
Victoria is in lockdown, for those of you that don't know, and that's why we're in Zoom mode. Let's talk about the way that the last round 11 started last week. It was a tremendous contest. Well, it was meant to be. On the field, it actually turned out to be an arm wrestle, but at the ground, it was just no fans, so it must have been very flat. But it saw the Demons emerge pretty special, favourites to claim their first title in a zillion years. They look pretty impressive, beating what has been a pretty impressive or awesome Western Bulldogs. So 87-59 was the final score. What did you make of that?
Well, I think, besides the Brisbane Lions, the Bulldogs have obviously been the hot team of the AFL, along with Melbourne as well. And, Melbourne needed to come out and show that, they can beat these hot teams and they are the real deal this year. And we got our answer. They are the real deal. You could see in the first 20 seconds of the game, the tone was set. They got the ball out of the middle. They kicked a goal straight away through Harms. And they were just set. They were just so clean defensively. They set up really well behind the ball. They just made things super difficult for the Bulldogs. And the Bulldogs could just never really get into their game. And Melbourne is showing this year that, they're no fluke. They are a real chance this year.
Well, it must be exciting for all those long-suffering Demons fans. Let's talk about the Collingwood fans that I don't know what's going on at the moment. They appear to be off the ground. They appear to be in a civil war. There are two potential presidents lining up to step in. Really amazing stuff. But on the pitch, they haven't been playing too well. And they took on the Cats last week.
Yeah, look, it was a really interesting game because the Cats looked to be in absolute cruise control. They looked like they were going to really run away with the game. And then, the last quarter hit and all of a sudden we just saw a completely different Collingwood. They went from kicking, or was it 1 or 2 goals in 3 quarters to all of a sudden kicking, five goals or whatever it was in the last quarter, and nearly had a chance to pinch the game from Geelong. It was a really strange game. If for the eye of people who, haven't been introduced to AFL football before, that's not the game you wanted to first watch. It was a pretty ugly game. It wasn't the greatest conditions. Obviously, no crowds. It was a bit eerie in there. And yeah, it wasn't the prettiest spectacle, but, as good teams do, Geelong, they just found a way in the end and they got the win.
The fans were watching the Brisbane Lions and Giants game, and that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, the Lions, they're just cruising along very nicely. They are, it was the Bulldogs, but you got to call the Lions the hot team at the moment. They're just on an absolute rampage, and it doesn't look like stopping anytime soon.
Chris Fagan looks to be pretty happy with that young crop of players of his. By the way, what's happened to St Kilda? They've actually turned up to play football.
They did actually turn up to play football, and it was a danger game. North Melbourne have shown that they have the capability to, fire up for games where they could potentially win and come out with big results. But St Kilda put that to rest pretty quickly and got a much needed win that they needed. They've been slammed in the media. They haven't played pretty football all year and they needed a big win and they got it.
One of the sides that has been terrific over the last 10 years has been the Hawks, and they took on the Suns. They didn't get the result they wanted.
Yeah, look, Gold Coast, again, it was another interesting game because Hawthorn have shown capability at times that, they can challenge with teams. And Gold Coast, especially away from Gold Coast, have proved to be a real tricky team to pick. Are they going to play good football, or are they going to be a team that struggles on the road? Well, they were the team that played good football. They got on a run pretty quickly and put Hawthorn to bed pretty early. And it was a really dominant display by the Suns. And the Hawks, they're finding it really, real tough at the moment and in a clear phase where it's just out with the old, in with the new now. They're starting the rebuild phase.
What did you make of the Bombers taking on the West Coast Eagles in Perth?
Well, we know how good West Coast are in Perth. They rarely lose there, and Optus Stadium is a bit of a fortress to them. And Essendon come in and said, "Nah, we're not going to let you have it." West Coast got off to a brilliant start. They were up by about 6 goals, and looked like they were going to really run away with the game. But obviously Tim Kelly goes down, their star midfielder. Oscar Allen, their promising young ruck dash forward, goes down as well. They're 2 men down, and Essendon felt the change. They adapted really well, and they pushed on. They got the lead, and they never looked back. Their last quarter was one of the best quarters of football. I think they'll be very happy with that. They played some brilliant football in the last quarter. They killed it out of the middle. They just played possession football. It was in their forward half the entire quarter, and West Coast couldn't get a run at it. So it was a brilliant win by the Bombers, and they're 1 game out of the 8.
Yeah. Look, we shouldn't be that surprised because they kicked pretty poorly at one stage. That score actually flatters the West Coast Eagles, the home side. Let me tell you, I thought Richmond looked pretty impressive when they got back up and beat the Crows.
Yeah, look, Richmond, again, they needed a bounce-back game. Well, and they're just, this is the time of the year where you start to see Richmond really hit their stride because they know the importance. We're at the midway point of the season. Finals are coming up. It's time to step up our game. And they showed it against Adelaide. Adelaide got off to a really quick start, and, they got up by about 3 or 4 goals. And I think a lot of people were sitting there thinking, okay, what's happening with Richmond here? Is something going on here? But, in typical Richmond fashion, just before you knew it, in a flick, they were back in the game. They were in front, and they never looked back. It was a pretty dominant display.
I was hoping that our team, the Carlton Bluebaggers, the Navy Blues, would take on Sydney in Sydney and really take it to them. But just Sydney, too smart, and at key intervals, did what they needed to do and got the points.
I think James Brayshaw said it best. It was a real typical Sydney win. They just grind you out, and they just wear you down, and then they pick you apart at the end and get the job done. And that's exactly what happened. Carlton, especially in the second quarter, they really dominated, and they dominated possession. They kept it in their forward half, but as Carlton have shown this year so far, they really struggled to execute and couldn't put them away. And it was only 2 points at half time. And you just, as a Carlton supporter, you were just sitting there feeling, yeah, you don't have a good feeling about this. It feels like a sense of deja vu. And Sydney, in that second half, they really come out. They got on top around the ball. They got on top around the ground, and they just really, really went rampant, especially in the last quarter.
And the round was completed when Port Adelaide beat Fremantle.
Yeah, the Power. I think that was pretty expected. The Power again needed a bounce back. They've played some average-ish football, not football that we've become accustomed to from the Power, and they come out and really needed to have a good game, and they did against the Dockers. The Dockers, obviously, we know they've had a bit of a tendency to struggle away from Optus Stadium this year, and it showed again. And going to Adelaide against Port Adelaide with that atmosphere, it's never easy. So Port Adelaide made the most of it.
Okay, very quickly now, let's go into the tips for round 12. And of course, COVID has created a monster jam, and players, of course, are not turning up or able to play in Melbourne. And if they are playing in Melbourne, there'll be no crowds. But let's go around and check. The big weekend match must be Melbourne Demons up against the Brisbane Lions, 2 of the hottest teams in the competition.
Yeah, it is 2 of the hottest teams in the competition, and 2 teams that are really battling it out. And look, I guess you could almost put them 2 as the premiership favourites at the moment. They're absolutely flying. And look, it's at
neutral ground. Who wins?
It is, and I think Melbourne's going to get it done. I'm making a big call here. I think Melbourne have shown, especially defensively, they're capable of beating teams that are quick, and we know how quick Brisbane are. They're very similar to the Bulldogs, and I think Melbourne can get it done. Okay,
I'll go for the Lions. Sydney Swans up against St Kilda. The game played in Sydney.
Yeah, I think Sydney have shown that when they play at the SCG, they're a pretty strong team. So I think even though St Kilda got a very handy win on the weekend, I think Sydney are gonna get up here. Can Collingwood get up
in Adelaide against the Crows?
Well, this game's obviously made a bit of news for, for some funny reasons at the same time too. Balls coming near you in the crowd, you must duck. Some crazy sort of stuff's happening. But I think if I'm tipping, I'm tipping the Crows here.
Oh, okay. What about the dream time at the G? It's been transferred to Optus Stadium in Perth. It's Richmond against the Bombers.
It's always a huge game, and it's always a pretty special game as well. I think we're calling it Dream Time at the O now.
Dream Time at the O.
Mistaken.
Okay. Who wins?
Yeah. It will be a big game, and Essendon have shown that they can match the top teams. But I think Richmond, knowing just how important this time of the season is now, I think they're going to show their true colours, and I think they're going to get up.
What about the Navy Blues up against the Eagles in Sydney?
Again, another neutral game. It's Carlton's home game, but it's a neutral game. And look, Carlton, they need a win here. And if there's any time that they feel they can get the Eagles, it's probably now. Tim Kelly's out. Oscar Allen's out. They've got a few players out. And West Coast haven't really travelled well to Sydney in previous years, albeit playing the Swans most of the time. But SCG hasn't been a happy hunting ground for them. And I'm going to tip the Blues here. I think they're due for a win, and I think they can get it done. Okay,
and to wrap up the round, who are you tipping? Is it going to be the Western Bulldogs bouncing back from what has been a tough loss, or will it be Fremantle at home?
I like the Bulldogs to bounce back here. We know that Fremantle are obviously like the Eagles. They're a tough team to beat in Perth, and they've shown that they can beat anyone. But I think the Bulldogs, the way their game style matches up, I think they're just going to be too strong.
Well, there you go. You've heard it from Alex Caiafa, the AFL expert on TheInformer. He's stuck his neck out and given you some scores and some tips for this weekend's rounds on the AFL. Joining us again each and every week, Alex Caiafa. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, George.